Welcome back, everyone, to Astrology Today with Jeff Harmon. I'm Ella, Jeff's assistant. Gosh, we have a lot of exciting points to touch on this evening. First of all, we've all heard about Trump. He's running for president in 2024. Jeff's going to take a look at the astrology on that. And since the Republicans have taken over the House, Biden seems to be getting some heat now. And Jeff's taking a look at that with the astrology. And then we've just been getting in some questions from you guys, which we're so excited about. So we're going to choose a question or two and look at those tonight.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. So the first thing is, yes. Okay. As the chart said, and we talked about this before, Ella, literally that it did not look like a big red Republican wave, which it wasn't, but it leaned towards Republican they were going to kind of get the advantage, and they did. They won the House. Yeah. They're pretty close on the Senate. I do think, that other Senate seat's up in the air. I don't know which way that's going to go, but it's likely to go to 51. And then, of course, Harris will be able to break the tie.
Harris is going to break it. Yeah.
Yeah, she'll break it. And if they don't get that, it's going to be a real disadvantage. But winning is by an inch or a mile. And what I love is they did get the majority in the House. And that's great. So the chart is right. That's what I love, is the chart turned out to be right. And even though we've got Lake and I think the other thing in Georgia going on with the two contestants, that's probably going to be runoffs on both of them. Yeah. Very likely. And we'll see what happens. Yeah. So, but overall, it did eke a little more. It leaned towards the Republicans gaining an advantage. They did in the governorships, and they did in many other areas. So, and particularly the House. So that's good. And, the big thing is, and you mentioned, is what's going on with Biden now. And clearly Biden is in trouble. I've mentioned this before. And when we look at Biden's chart, there's no question. He just moved into a Saturn Dasha. I'm going to put that up on the screen here real briefly, because it is worthy of doing that. So you'll see here, when I go to Biden's chart, there he is right there. He just moved into a Saturn major period for 19 years. And I don't think he's going to be around 19 years from now. But the biggest problem with Biden is he's got Saturn transiting his south node, also known as K2, when right in January. January 17th really looks like it really gets bad for him. And of course, what are we hearing right now? We're hearing, Jim Gordon, the House Judiciary Committee, is taking over, and of course, Comer, and they're going to be coming after him. And I can tell you they're going to go after him and Hunter Biden. I think there's going to be a lot of investigations and a lot of trouble for this guy. As I said, the inauguration chart for Biden and Harris was atrocious. It was really bad. I mean, it looked bad. It's a Sun conjunct Saturn. You had hard aspects between the Moon, Pluto, and Mars. Forget it. I don't think this is going past the third year. I think Biden is going to really go clunk this year, coming up in 23. So, that's all coming to pass. And clearly, no matter what he says, I mean, it's pretty arrogant of a United States president to say, well, good luck investigating me. Really, that far above the law. I thought that was kind of an interesting statement. But,
let's see how this plays out. Let's see how it all plays out.
Yep, we'll see how it plays out. My guess is with the astrology, it ain't looking too good for Biden. Not at all. He's not going to have a good year in 2023. Yeah. So, that's that one.
Well, it's interesting then when you move over to Trump, right? His chart, he's got some challenges coming up himself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And let's move over to Trump, as we're sharing screens here. Donald Trump, he couldn't have picked a really worse time to announce his candidacy for 2024. But I would say this. It's indicative of Trump. Trump has always been a guy who really loves a fight, loves contentious, energy, and he picked it. When he announced it was Moon opposed Saturn, a lot of astrologers have talked about this. But the interesting thing was, I took note of the mundane time he announced, which was a Moon opposition Saturn. And, we don't need astrology to tell us that Trump's going to have a real battle in front of him. There's no question.
Right.
The opposition to him with the media on their side is going to be formidable. It's going to be World War III with him. It really will. But the interesting thing was I did cast a chart after he made his announcement, and, I heard it and all that, and I thought, wow, I wonder if this guy is going to win. So I cast an interrogation chart. And interestingly enough, the moon was separating by 44 seconds, not minutes, seconds of arc from the opposition of Saturn and applying to a sextile of Mars. Don't count Trump out. Even though I know a lot of people are going to be irritated with me saying this, they're going to say, well, he's horrible. I hate him. But a lot of people love him, and they love him. They really love him. And a lot of people really hate him. I've never seen a politician who has created a wake of dissension behind him. Like this guy.
Like Trump has. Yeah.
Like Trump has. And I noticed in his speech, I did watch a little bit of it, and clearly he was a much different Trump. He was much more on message, not, doing any digs towards anyone, which I think has garnered him a lot of opposition.
Which was shocking. And he actually even physically looked different, right?
He did. Mm-hmm. It was really, you could see it.
Like put together. In a different kind of way, I guess.
Much different way. Even the shade of hair dye was better, So it just, it clearly, but in all seriousness, he clearly did have a message that everybody complimented was very much on point. Mm-hmm. And, I think if Trump had that attitude all the way through, he would have never garnered the opposition towards him like he has. It's been really abrasive. But here's the interesting thing about Donald Trump is, 2023 is a bumpy time. And I've been saying this. Trump is in a dangerous time right now. He has the progressed Mars squaring Pluto. This is by what we call primary direction. Plain English, dangerous time. Dangerous time. He's got to really watch it. I'm glad he's got the Secret Service around him, because if they don't try and take him out just with the media and politically, don't be surprised if they try taking him out physically. I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet. I'm always been surprised that Trump is still drawing breath.
Yeah.
Because, these are the kind of guys, they don't play around. So he's clearly going to have some opposition here that is formidable. And he's also got a primary directed Saturn conjuncting Pluto in his birth chart. These are once in a lifetime aspects. And, I was the one who called Trump winning. Everybody said, oh, you're out of your mind. Well, he had primary directed Sun conjuncting his ascendant for the first time in his entire life when he took the presidency in 2016. This one I don't think is going to be as easy, but here's the clincher. Now that we're on the screen here, notice something right here. The fall, and I just clicked on up here, you can see my cursor, on September of 2024. Now that's right in the heat of the battle. I mean, the election's really going to be full tilt from September of 2024 forward. I mean, obviously everybody's, casting their ballots right in November. So he really picks up speed because he hits what we call sub-period of Venus. Moreover, Jupiter by transits his sun in his midheaven. So if there was ever a time he would pick up steam, it would be there. And of course, this guy will never, he's getting what? He's already 76. He's going to be 70, 77, 78 when he wins.
He'll be 78 then. Yeah.
But I think he will win. I think he's got a good shot. I'll tell you that. But I think he is really signed up for the Battle of the Bulge here by analogy. I really do. But it looks like don't count him out. Don't count him out. He is a very interesting guy. Every time, they've declared him dead and danced on his grave, he comes back,
Yeah.
Whether you love him or hate him, I would say there's a strong possibility here. He could prevail, especially if he stays on message like he did in that announcment.
Well,
that's the only kind of Trump that'll
be interesting to see. But
that will.
There's a long road to November 2024. So we're talking about a long
road. You bet. And it looks like a tough time for him.
Yeah. Wow. Really, really interesting. Really interesting. And I can't remember. Did you already touch on the how the chart looked when you were looking at the midterm elections, right? The chart did show it was leaning towards the Republicans gaining, but slowly. It wasn't going to happen. You did say this. Yeah,
right. I did say that. Well, I also said we wouldn't have the full answer right away, and we haven't. I mean, look at where we are. Well, today's the 17th of November.
Right. Right.
This will probably air tomorrow. So, bottom line is, we're literally 10 days, 11 days past, and we still haven't got all the answers yet. We got a lot of the answers. But, this is going to hang in the balance for a while.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is,
There you have it. We'll be tracking it.
There you have it. Yeah.
The astrology will be tracking it.
Exactly.
So what's our first question going to be? We have gotten a number of questions, which are all very interesting. So what's the first question we're going to look at tonight?
Well, I think one of the things that came in was, Jay Leno, what happened with Jay Leno? Well, we all know what happened.
A lot of people wanting to know what's going on in his astrology. Yeah.
That's right. And one of the big things is, for anybody who doesn't know, most people do, he was working on a car apparently in his garage, and the gasoline was leaking down on him, and a spark happened, and it really burned him quite bad. In fact, he's actually at a burn center just a couple of miles from where I'm at right now, which is up in West Hills, California. And he's in a hyperbaric chamber, they call it, where he's all wrapped up with, having surgery and skin grafts or whatever they did to him.
Horrible.
And he's in rough shape. Apparently, if a friend had not pulled him out and, help extinguish it, he wouldn't be alive right now.
Thank God that person was there with him. Thank God.
Yeah.
So what was going on in his astrology on that day and just overall?
Well, I can tell you overall right now, Jay Leno has a Neptune opposition Mars. And I can tell you, we all know about meanie Mars. You certainly do. Remember all the stuff you went through with Mars, with those progressions that I warned you about years ago.
Yeah.
Brutal. Yeah. And, Mars, when you have hard aspects to Mars, particularly with Neptune can rule fuels. And that hard aspect, I think, had he been aware of it, I think, I would have said this is now a time where I'd exercise great caution working with tools, instruments, fuels, anything like that. Because, everybody knows Jay Leno's garage. I mean, he's always reviewing things. And, he's a pretty nice guy. Remember, we've ran into him.
We did.
And I ran into him several times. He's a nice guy. But the bottom line is, anybody who has, I always tell clients in readings, if you have hard aspects between Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto in Mars, you got to exercise caution. I always liken it to driving on glare ice roads. Either stay off of them or exercise extreme caution.
Right. Well, this is something that I love about the astrology, that you really can use it as a guide. And we do, and so many people do in their lives, because let's say, these harsh energies do come to all of us. They come to all of us. Do. And I can recall many times you've told me, well, you have this aspect going on, or this transit. So make sure you pay attention when you're crossing the street. Make sure you pay attention when you're doing this or doing that. And I do pay extra attention at those times. And I wonder if I hadn't, maybe an accident would have or could have happened. So this is something that's so wonderful about the astrology.
It is. And I'm glad you're bringing that up, because, this is a source of huge contention with people. I've run into this all my life. In fact, I was a skeptic about astrology back in the 70s. And, I really was. So with my mother, I'm like, come on, this stuff doesn't work, right? And even to the non-believers, which trust me, there's still a lot of them out there. I've said, well, didn't have an issue in your life right here? Oh, you're right. Even though they don't believe astrology, they agree that the fact that the energy that was occurring during a certain period in their time, or when they might have had issues or accidents or what have you, it showed up.
Right.
And like for instance, in the 70s, I had a primary directed Mercury conjuncting Mars. A friend came by with a motorcycle. I didn't want to take it for a ride. He goes, no, please test drive it. So we take off, right? And I'm going down the road and I'm looking at this lady coming at me, and I'm doing 50 miles an hour, right? On a divided highway. And I said to myself, oh my God, she's going to pull out in front of me. And at the last second, she pulls right out in front of me. and then turns, realizing what she did, and hits me head on. And then I remember, several hours later, the police came up to my hospital room, shook my hand, and I said, "Why are you shaking my hand?" He says, "Because we said body bag, and you were still alive in the ditch 100 feet away without a helmet." So, I was very fortunate. But I looked back at that in retrospect and went, "My God, this is in probably like 77, something like that." Mm-hmm. And had I been paying more attention, I think I would have probably really abstained. In fact, even these days now, I'm really careful when I drive my motorcycle now, when I see hard aspects going on. I'm much more aware. I mean, we always should be aware handling a vehicle. Yeah. There's no question. Anytime you're working or driving, be careful, right? Right. But I find that paying close attention when you have really malefic outer transits like Jay Leno did. Jay Leno had a Neptune oppose Mars. That's the twilight zone. That's oftentimes where frenetic energy comes in. I've had a lot of people. I've had people in entertainment who say to me, "My God, what's going on in my life?" I said, "Well, you got Neptune squaring Mars. This is where you can be bamboozled in business deals, or your energy gets really skewed." Just skewed. Just skewed. And, when you realize this, instead of treating astrology like some superstitious predicting the future, it's just energy. And when you treat it with logic like that, it's superior, because you realize this is just a science of geometry between the celestial influences and each one of us. And if you look at it that way and you start getting the woo-woo out of it and just say, wow, okay, this is the trait of this thing. I've looked at psychiatrists who said to me, "Jeff, what is going on?" And I'm like, well, you got this aspect, or you moved on this line, or what have you. Right. And these are people who study the mind, and they're going, wow, that was right on. Yeah.
And it is right on. It's fascinating how right on it is, but it is.
It is. I have a wonderful story I want to tell. You just reminded me of something. This is about a child. Wonderful story. These parents called me up, and really good parents. I mean, I wish I had parents like that. Of course, I did have a great mother like that. But the parents said to me, both the mother and the father, said, "Our child's having such a rough time right now." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "Well, the psychiatrist wants to medicate him, and the other doctor wants to do this." And I said, "Okay, you got to listen to your doctors, do what you feel is appropriate." And they both said, "No, we're really, really against, because we researched all these medications and we just didn't feel it was the right way to go." And, there's a young kid. He's probably 7, 8 years old. And I examined the chart, and it was very interesting because it was also involving Neptune and Mars. Very powerful progression, especially for a young child. I said, this is going to get stronger between now and the next 6 months. But here's the good news. Just like Jay Leno, he'll never have this aspect again in his life.
Happen again.
Ever. Right. Never going to. Why? Because he's going to have to live to be another 180 years old. Right. And I don't think that's happening. I wish him well. But, and if he does, I want to know what he's eating for breakfast. But the bottom line is, I told the parents this, and they said, "Wow, you mean if we were really supportive and we really took, all kinds of, different evasive actions to support him, that this is actually going to get better right here?" I said, "That's what the chart indicates." But I said, "I can't, prescribe medicine. I can't give you medical advice." But I said, as parents, you can do as you want. Right. So that's what they elected to do. They actually said, we're going to work with counselors. We're going to, really support this child and make it wonderful. And they did. And you know what? After that aspect cleared up, they called me up and they said, "We can't believe it. He's like a different kid." He said, the minute those aspects separated, because I actually gave him graphs and charts on it, they said, "He shifted." I said, I know. This stuff is like tractor beams. You feel like you're caught in the Death Star of, Star Wars when it happens. It's very, very powerful.
So powerful.
And the good stuff is powerful too.
It's just as powerful. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
It's like going down a road. You go up the hills, you go down the hills, you go around the corners, you got to come to the stop signs, whatever it is. It's a road. Yeah. And when you examine it, it's really, really powerful. So Jay Leno's, he also had an inner Mars transit too, that was very close to the trigger point of when that happened. Very close. So it was hot. So it's a confluence of things,
Yeah,
and, very,
always, very always. And I love what you were saying earlier about when you really accept that what these astrological energies, that they are really energies. It's energy. When you accept that, you kind of start to build a relationship with these planets. You know, you and I were talking about this the other day. Like, I really feel like I'm getting to know Mars, like I'm getting to know Jupiter and Venus and Pluto, because and I feel like I'm going through life differently in a sense. I really, in a good way, you know, even though sometimes they're pretty harsh. I respect that, but yeah.
You bet. I mean, we all want to, you know, look at our astrology and look at the good times that are coming. But a lot of times it's really wise to look at the challenges that are coming, because there's always lessons in it, number one. Number two, there's always a way you can react differently. Like, a good analogy is if you're driving in a car and you're not focused on your environment, you're going to definitely have an issue. You know, sooner or later, somebody's going to pull out in front of you, hit the brakes, or whatever. So it's like that with astrology. The healthy way to look at it is, if you are aware of the energies that are surrounding you, you're going to operate differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And another thing that I've noticed is it kind of takes the pressure off of me, in a sense. Like, sometimes you think, well, what's wrong with me? If you feel a certain way or you're going through certain things, and then you look at your astrology and you see why. Well, you're going through this because this is happening in your life right now. This is what the planets are doing. It's very, very helpful to understand that. It really, really is. Really is.
Yeah, I think, what this really leads to is, instead of astrology being, you know, laughed at as a pseudoscience by astronomers, not that all do, but a lot do, and start looking at it as no different than electricity. We know electricity has an effect, right? And when you apply it, it's a wonderful tool for humanity. It's the same thing. If you start treating this as energy, in which it is, it's irrefutable in my opinion. Even some of the staunchest skeptics I have said, you know, they've looked at it and said, well, you're right. That's when that did happen. I still don't believe it, but you know, that's okay. You know, belief is not required, you know, belief is a very interesting thing when you psychologically analyze it. You know,
it's true. It's really true. So what's our next question?
Well, the last one is kind of a different question. You know, I don't get questions quite like this, but it was really interesting. A person from Japan, a wonderful person, and I'll keep the person's name confidential, but had asked me a question that's kind of unusual that I've never gotten asked too often. And that is, will, you know, we kind of overcome this new wave of fascism, if you will, that's been encroached upon the world, and will the people either rise up and overcome it, or will we overcome it as a populace? And I thought that was a good question, actually. So, you know, when I examined it, it actually showed that many of the people were actually almost hoodwinked, or you could say they're buying a lot of the misinformation that's put out there by various different media sources and so on and so forth. And, you know, this is often the case where we find a lot of people see reality, and a lot of people don't. They actually really believe some of the stuff that's been handed to them. Yeah. And this showed that. It showed there's been a lot of effective mind control programming, if you will. And I think that's always been the case. Yeah. But it really showed. But here's the positive outcome of the question. It showed that, and this parallels a lot of what I was saying earlier about the United States. We are in a trying time. There's no question. You know, you listen to some of the New One World Orders, they want transhumanism, they want microchips, they want, you know, 5G and mind control and all the things they can get. You know, it's like advertising was mind control when it first came out, still is. It works, but you know, you tell somebody enough things, enough time, and pretty soon they're going to go, you know, okay, you know, here's my money. So, and sometimes it's for good things. But here's my point: is the chart actually looked like they're not going to be as successful as they'd like to be with this new fascist wave. I think it's going to go on for a while. And, you know, to this whole effect, I mean, if you look back through history, we've always seen evil forces always throughout history attacking humanity. And like I've mentioned, I think the evil spirits are intertwined by actually force to be a part of the entire molecular and you could say spiritual creational forces on these lower dimensions. And I guess where I'm going with this is that good always seems to win.
Yeah.
You know, and it's nice to hear somebody ask a question like that and actually see the chart confirm it. Yeah.
That's pretty wonderful. Pretty wonderful.
You know, well, and again, what do I always say? You know, I always love to show that diagram where no matter what your belief is, you know, divinity, God, whatever you want to say, is above all creation, and everything drips down from the spiritual to the physical. Right. Yeah. You know, we're going to talk about this. I actually have a couple of cool old texts that actually talk about the angels, the archangels, the spirits, and the intelligences that many of the ancient cultures, particularly the Egyptians, the Chaldeans, the Greeks, the Hellenistic whole movement, all the way up into the medieval times, especially, and as well as the Vedantic. They call them deities, we call them angels, which are really involved with the whole forces of creation in this matrix called the zodiac and the planets. Right. And again, astronomy laughs at this in hard sciences because they're, well, wait a minute, everything's masses and gases and orbits and speeds and all that. Okay. But on the other hand, would it go on for thousands of years if it weren't having some type of truth, you know? Yeah, right. No, right. And I mean, you don't make this stuff up. That's true. Yeah, it's not. It's true. It's real. It's encrypted in the ciphers in the ancient biblical and Vedantic texts. Right. It's literally encrypted in that. Yeah. And it sure is. Again, you see so much reality of it. Again, I'm not here to promote astrology, but the interesting thing is it has an uncanny way of influencing all of the physical matter on Earth. You know? Yes, it does. All right. Yeah. Well, this has been a little short, but definitely sweet. I think we covered everything we wanted to tonight. You know, each week we're certainly going to look at a question or two, keep continuing to do this. So, you guys please keep continuing to ask your questions. And, anything else? No, we're good to go. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you real soon, and take good care of yourselves. You bet. Thank you.